सेव्या श्री कृष्णाय नमोस्तु मे मदेक बंधो मत्संगिन मद्गुरो मन्महाधनं मन्निस्तारक मद्भाग्य मदानंद नमोस्तु ते साधु साधुता दायिन् पतिनीचोच्चताकर आनमुंच कदाचिन् मां प्रेमणा हृत्कण्ठयो स्फुर। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरो श्रीयुतपदकमलं श्रीगुरो वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सद्गुणगणाथान्वितं तं सजीवम् साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं विष्णुचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधाकृष्णपादां सगणललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतलेशं ते भक्तवेदान्तस्वामिन्यत्राम्ने नमस्ते सारस्वती देवे गौरवाणि प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषशून्यादि पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे श्रीकृष्णचैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानन्द श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौरभक्तवृन्द हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। Okay, let's resume. 3.6.26 onwards, which is our 26 is also the 26 here. Sattvam chasya vinirбhinnam mahandhishnyam upavishyat chittenam shena yenaso vijnanam pratipadyate. Thereafter, when the consciousness of the gigantic form separately manifested itself, the total energy, the Mahatattva, entered with the gigantic form's conscious part. Thus, the living entity is able to conceive specific knowledge. Sattvam iti buddhi chittayor abhedena nirdeshaha. Here, buddhi and chitta are equated. Mahaniti Brahma. The Mahatattva entered means Lord Brahma entered. Brahma is the presiding deity of the Mahatattva. Chittena chetana ya. Chittena amshena. He entered along with consciousness. Sattam chitta aspadam golakam. Sattvam, consciousness here, is the seat of chitta. Chittena indriyena vijnanam samanyato gyayam. Through the sense of chitta, one has generic knowledge. Such a buddherapi upalakshanam. And this is indicative of buddhi also. Vachittu padao asya iti anantaram buddhim cha asya ityadikam api padyam prathagasti. In some readings, there's a separate verse regarding buddhi. Sattvam chitta aspadam golakam hridaya ekadesham. This is also one part of the heart, the subtle body. Mahan Vishnu, Vijnanam Chetanam. Mahan is Vishnu. It looks like Brahma, empowered by Vishnu, enters in. 27. Shishnosya dhyaurdharapadbhyam kham nabher utapadyata gunanam vritayo yeshu pratiyante suradayah. Thereafter, from the head of the gigantic form, the heavenly planets were manifested, and from his legs, the earthly planets were manifested, and from his abdomen, the sky was manifested. Within these places, the demigods and others were then manifested, who, in terms of were then manifested in terms of the modes of material nature. Now, the generation of the three worlds is stated here. Shishnaha iti. Vrtayaha parinamaha. Vrtayaha. Gunanam vrtayaha. The reactions of the three modes of material nature were manifested here. That means the transformations of the modes of material nature. Shirshnaha iti asya virajaha. Shirshnaha. Dhyuloka karana amshat. Okay, so this is a reference to, this verse is a reference to the head of the gigantic form. Because it is a partial cause for the heavenly planets. Evam anyatra abhigyeyam bhorlokaha. In this way, the bhorloka also should be understood to be referring to other places. In other verses, 28. Atyantikena satvena divam devah prapedire dharam rajasvabhavena panayo yecha tananu. The demigods qualified by the super excellent quality of the mode of goodness are situated in the heavenly planets, whereas human beings, because of their nature in the mode of passion, live on the earth in the company of their subordinates. Etadeva prapanchayati dvabhyam. This is now elaborated in two verses. Atyantikena urjitena. Extreme. Pana vyavahare panante yaga adina vyavaharanti vipanayaham manushyaha. Panayaha refer to human beings. The ones who engage in, who work basically, who work through sacrifices for their happy subsistence. तान अनु एतत् उपकरणभूता ये गव आदयः ते अपि धरां प्रपेदिरे. In the company of their subordinates. The subordinates here refer to the upakaranas, accessories. Their accessories. Their accessories means the accessories for their pious activities such as fire sacrifices. This refers to cows and so on. They also attain the earthly planetary system. In the Bhagavad Gita 14.14 to 15, it is said that those who are highly developed in the mode of goodness are promoted to the higher heavenly planetary system. That those who are overpowered by the mode of passion are situated in the middle planetary systems, the Earth and similar planets. And that those who are surcharged with the mode of ignorance are degraded to the lower planetary systems or to the animal kingdom. The demigods are highly developed in the mode of goodness, and thus they are situated in the heavenly planets. Below human beings are the animals, some of whom mingle with human society. Cows, horses, dogs, etc., are habituated to living under the protection of human beings. The word atyantikena, extreme, is very significant in this verse. By extreme development of the mode of goodness in the material nature, one can become situated in the heavenly planets. But by excessive development of the modes of passion and ignorance, the human being indulges in killing animals who are meant to be protected by mankind. Persons who indulge in unnecessary animal killing have excessively developed the modes of passion and ignorance and have no hope of advancing to the mode of goodness. They are destined to be degraded to lower statuses of life. The planetary systems are calculated as upper and lower in terms of the classes of living entities who live there. 29. Artiyena subhavena bhagavannaabhimashrita ubhayor antaram vyoma ye rudra parshadam gana. Living entities who are associates of Rudra have developed the mode of ignorance, the third mode of material nature. They are situated in the sky between the earthly planets and the heavenly planets. Tritiyam tamaha diyena tamasena ubhayor vyavya prithivyor antaram madhyam vyoma antariksham taddeva bhagavataha nabhihi. This sky between the earthly planets and the heavenly planets is itself the nabhi, the navel of the gigantic form of the personality of God in Bhagavad Nabhim. Tam ashita, Rudra Parshadam, Rudratsya Parshadanam Bhutadinam Ganaha. तृतीयं तमस्तदीयेन तामस्येनेत्यर्थः ये रुद्रपाशतां भूतादीनां गणाः ते भगवतः विराजहन् नाभिमाशिता इत्यन्वयः. So they are situated in the navel of the Virat form of Bhagavan. Nabhireva, what is that navel? Trahau bhayor jya vya prithivyor antaram ram madhyam vyoma akasham bhuvarlokam. So this is the Bhuvarloka. They are situated in the sky between the earthly planets and the heavenly planets. The middle portion of the sky is called Bhuvarloka, as confirmed by both Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti and Srila Jiva Goswami. It's like Jiva Goswami's commentary for this must have been there, though it's not found in this edition. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is stated that those who develop the mode of passion are situated in the middle region. Those who are situated in the mode of goodness are promoted to the regions of the demigods. Those who are situated in the mode of passion are placed in human society, and those who are situated in the mode of ignorance are placed in the society of animals or ghosts. There are no contradictions in this conclusion. The numerous living entities distributed all over the universe in different planets are so situated in terms of their own qualities in the modes of material nature. 30. Mukhato vartata brahma. Purushasya kurudvaha. Yastun varnana mukhyo bhut brahmano guruhu. O chief of the Kuru dynasty, the Vedic wisdom became manifested from the mouth of the Virat, the universal form. Those who are inclined to this Vedic knowledge are called Brahmanas, and they are the natural teachers and spiritual masters of all the orders of society. Avartata, pravrittam, Brahma, Veda, yastu mukhatvan, mukodbhavatvan, varnana mukhyaha, mukhyam, mukhamiva, pratamaha, guruhu cha abhut, saha abhimukhataka avartata, iti anushangaha. So Vedic wisdom became manifested from the mouth of Virat, and the Brahmanas also manifested. Adhyapanadina Brahmanasya Vedaha Vrittihi. The Brahmanas subsist on the Vedas because they teach the Veda and so on. Taya Vrittya Saha Brahmana Mukhata Jata iti artha. The meaning is, along with their occupation of teaching the Vedas, the Brahmanas appeared from the mouth of the universal form. Evam uttaratra varnatrayepi gyatavyam. In the later descriptions also, the remaining three varnas also should be understood in the same manner. Chaturvarni Utpattimaha. Now the generation of the four varnas are described. Brahma Vedaha, Purushasya Parameshwara, Parameshwarena Aikya, Tasya Mukataha Avartata Abhu. Where is it? Purushasya Parameshwarena Aikya, Tasya. Here, the Virat Purusha has been considered identical with Parameshwara, the Supreme Lord. Yastulmukhatvad, Vedolmukhatvad, Hetur, Varna, Mukhyo, Gruhucha, Bhut, Brahma. Because the Brahma is inclined to the Vedas, he is considered the chief amongst the Varnas and the Guru of the Varnas. So, Bhimukhata Avartate Tena Shinda. As confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita 4.13, the four orders of human society developed with the order of the body of the gigantic form. The bodily divisions are the mouth, arms, waist, and legs. Those who are situated on the mouth are called Brahmanas. Those who are situated on the arms are called Kshatriyas. Those who are situated on the waist are called Vaishyas. And those who are situated on the legs are called Shudras. Everyone is situated in the body of the Supreme in his gigantic Vishwarupa form. In terms of the four orders, therefore, no caste is to be considered degraded because of being situated on a particular part of the body. In our own bodies, we do not show any actual difference in our treatment towards the hands or legs. Each and every part of the body is important, although the mouth is the most important of the bodily parts. If other parts are cut off from the body, a man can continue his life, but if the mouth is cut off, one cannot live. Mouth here refers to the head. If the head is cut off, a man cannot live. Therefore, this most important part of the body of the Lord is called the sitting place of the Brahmanas who are inclined to the Vedic wisdom. One who is not inclined to the Vedic wisdom but to mundane affairs cannot be called the Brahmana, even if he is born of a Brahmana family or father. However, Brahmana father does not qualify one as a Brahmana. The main qualification of a Brahmana is to be inclined to the Vedic wisdom. The Vedas are situated on the mouth of the Lord, and therefore anyone who is inclined to the Vedic wisdom is certainly situated on the mouth of the Lord, and he is a Brahmana. This inclination towards Vedic wisdom is also not restricted to any particular caste or community. Anyone from any family and from any part of the world may become inclined to the Vedic wisdom, and that will qualify him as a real Brahmana. A real Brahmana is a natural teacher or spiritual master. Unless one has Vedic knowledge, one cannot become a spiritual master. The perfect knowledge of the Vedas is to know the Lord, the personality of Godhead, and that is the end of Vedic knowledge or Vedanta. One who is situated in the impersonal Brahman and has no information of the Supreme Personality of God may become a Brahmana, but he cannot become a spiritual master. It is said in the Padma Purana, Chatkarman Nipno Vipro, Mantra Tantra Visharadaha, Avaishnavo Guru Nasyad, Vaishnavashva Pacho Guru. An impersonalist can become a qualified Brahmana, but he cannot become a spiritual master unless and until he is promoted to the stage of a Vaishnava or a devotee of the personality of God. Lord Chaitanya, the great authority of Vedic wisdom in the modern age, stated, Kibanyasi, Shudra Kenenai, Jai Krishna Tattvavetta, say Guru Hai. A person may be a Brahmana or a Shudra or a sannyasi, but if he happens to be well versed in the science of Krishna, then he is fit to become a spiritual master. This is Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adhyaya 8.128. The qualification then of a spiritual master is not to be a qualified Brahmana, but to be well versed in the science of Krishna. One who is conversant with Vedic wisdom is a Brahmana. And only a Brahmana who is a pure Vaishnava and knows all the intricacies of the science of Krishna can become a spiritual master. 51. Bahubhyo vartata kshatram, kshatriyastadanu vrataha. Yo jatas trayate varnan, paurushah kantaka kshatat. Thereafter, the power of protection was generated from the arms of the gigantic Virat form. And in relation to such power, the Kshatriyas also came into existence by following the Kshatriya principle of protecting society from the disturbance of thieves and miscreants. Kshatram palana rupa vritihi. Tad kshatram anuvrataha anusrataha kshatriyaha api bahubhya vartata ityartaha. So the Kshatriya is one who's following, who's inclined to the function of protection. So the Kshatriya class appeared from the two arms of the gigantic form. The second half of the verse is a description of this inclination of the Kshatriya. Paurushaha, Purushasya Vishnor Amshaha. The Kshatriya is considered to be an Amsha of the Purusha. Lord Vishnu is considered a representative of the personality of God. Antakaha Chora Areha, Ebhyaha Yat Kshatam Upadravaha, Tasmatrayate Rakshati. And the inclination is to protect the Varnas, Varnan, you see, protects the other Varnas from the disturbance caused by the thorns of the kingdom. Kantaka, very commonly used in Arthashastra literature. The thorns of the kingdom refer to all these sources of disturbances like thieves, etc. Thieves, corrupt people in the government, these are all considered thorns. Very extensively they are dealt with in Arthashastra. Kshatrambhava Shakti Purushasya ayam tadiya palana shakti matvad ityartha. So here Paurusham indicates that this Kshatriyas have the potency to, they have the potency of the Lord to protect. As the Brahmanas are recognized by their particular qualification of inclination towards the transcendental knowledge of Vedic wisdom, so also the Kshatriyas are recognized by their power to protect society from the disturbing elements of thieves and miscreants. The word Anuvratha is significant. A person who follows the Kshatriya principles by protecting society from thieves and miscreants is called a Kshatriya, not the one who is simply born a Kshatriya. The conception of the caste system is always based on quality and not in the qualification of birth. Birth is an extraneous consideration. It is not the main feature of the orders and divisions. In the Bhagavad Gita 18.41 to 44, the qualifications of the Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras are specifically mentioned. And it is understood that all such qualifications are needed before one can be designated as belonging to a particular group. Lord Vishnu is always mentioned as the Purusha in all Vedic literatures. Sometimes the living entities are also mentioned as Purushas, although they are essentially Purusha Shakti, Parashakti or Paraprakriti, the superior energy of the Purusha. Illusioned by the external potency of the Purusha, the Lord, living entities falsely think of themselves as the Purusha, although they actually have no qualifications. The Lord has the power to protect. Of the three deities, Brahma, Vishnu, and Maheshwara, the first has the power to create, the second has the power to protect, and the third has the power to destroy. The word Purusha is significant in this verse because the Kshatriyas are expected to represent the Purusha Lord in giving protection to the Prajas or all those who are born on the land or in the water. Protection is therefore meant for both men and animals. In modern society, the Prajas are not protected from the hands of thieves and miscreants. The modern democratic state, which has no Kshatriyas, is a government of the Vaishyas and Shudras and not of Brahmanas and Kshatriyas as formerly. Maharaj Yudhishthira and his grandson Maharaj Parikshit were typical Kshatriya kings, for they gave protection to all men and animals. When the personification of Kali attempted to kill a cow, Maharaj Parikshit at once prepared himself to kill the miscreant, and the personification of Kali was banished from his kingdom. That is a sign of a Purusha or representative of Lord Vishnu. According to Vedic civilization, a qualified Kshatriya monarch is given the respect of the Lord because he represents the Lord by giving protection to the Prajas. Modern elected presidents cannot even give protection from theft cases, and therefore one has to take protection from an insurance company. The problems of modern human society are due to the lack of qualified Brahmanas and Kshatriyas and the over-influence of the Vaishyas and Shudras due to the so-called general franchise. Everybody should have his right. People should have the right to make money and become comfortable. All these concepts are the ones that are bringing about the over-influence of the Vaishyas and Shudras. Otherwise, in a welfare state where everybody is trained to and regulated to conceive of the greatest good of the entire society as being the highest priority of social life, you will not have this kind of over-influence of the Vaishyas and Shudras. That's a question here.
Prabhuji, what is this so-called general franchise?
That's what I told you.
When everyone is allowed to make money.
Yeah. This also has other technical connotations, but the basic idea is this. Everybody should be given freedom. In Varnashrama society, everybody does not have this kind of freedom. It's craziness, it's insanity. Because if everybody does like this, then the society will not be favorable for liberation from material existence. So that is why in Varnashrama society things are very different. 32. Visho vartanta tasyorvo lokavritik karir vibho Vaishyastadudbhavo vartam nrinam yas samavartayat. Everyone's means of livelihood, namely production of grains and their distribution to the prajas, was generated from the ties of the Lord's gigantic form. The mercantile men who take charge of such activities are called Vaishyas. Vishaha, Krishyadi Vivasayaha. Here, Vishaha refers to the sources of livelihood, such as agriculture. Lokasya vritikarihi jivika hetavaha. Tasya vibhor purvo pravrittaha. They generated from these means of livelihood were generated from the ties of the Lord's gigantic form. Tad udbhava purujaha vartam jivikam yah svavritya sampaditavan. So this was arranged by the Lord. Samavartya sampaditavan. Human society's means of living is clearly mentioned here as Visha or agriculture, and the business of distributing agricultural products, which involves transport, banking, etc. Industry is an artificial means of livelihood, and large-scale industry especially is the source of all the problems of society. In the Bhagavad Gita also, the duties of the Vaishyas who are engaged in Vishaha are stated as cow protection, agriculture, and business. We have already discussed that the human being can safely depend on the cow and agricultural land for his livelihood. The exchange of produce by banking and transportation is a branch of this type of living. The Vaishyas are divided into many subsections. Some of them are called Kshetri or landowners. Some are called Krishna or land tillers. Some of them are called Tilavanik or grain raisers. Some are called Gandhavanik or merchants in spices. And some are called Suvarnavanik or merchants in gold and banking. The Brahmanas are the teachers and spiritual masters. The Kshatriyas protect the citizens from the hands of thieves and miscreants. And the Vaishyas are in charge of production and distribution. Okay, so the idea is the Brahmanas, they contribute to society by teaching and by helping people become moral and spiritually realized. The Kshatriyas, they protect the citizens from the hands of those who create disturbances in society. The Vaishyas, they're the ones who produce food and provide it for the society. The Shudras, the unintelligent class of men who cannot work independently by performing any of the above mentioned activities, are meant to earn their livelihood by serving the three higher classes. And then you have some who cannot become Brahmanas, who cannot become Kshatriyas, who cannot become Vaishyas also. So these people are then all put together under the category of Shudras. Their duty is to assist these three groups. Formerly, the Brahmanas were given all the necessities of life by the Kshatriyas and Vaishyas because they had no time to spend making a living. The Kshatriyas would collect taxes from the Vaishyas and Shudras. But the Brahmanas were exempt from paying income tax or property tax. That system of human society was so nice that there were no political, social, or economic upheavals. The different castes or Varna classifications are therefore essential for maintaining a peaceful human society. 53. Padbhyam bhagavato yajye shushruषा dharma siddhaye tasyam jatah pura shudro yadvritya tushyate harihi. Thereafter service was manifested from the legs of the personality of Godhead for the sake of perfecting the religious functions situated on the legs of the Shudras who satisfy the Lord by service. Tasyam nimitta bhutayam yasya vritya hari swayameva tushyati. So by this activity of service, Lord Hari is personally satisfied. Padbhyamiti yadvritya. चारूपया ब्राह्मणादिना सर्वेण अपि स्वस्मिन् कृते तैरपि तुष्यति इति तद्वृत्तेर्महिमा दर्शितः। यद्वृत्त्या शुश्रूषारूपया ब्राह्मणादिना सर्वेण अपि स्वस्मिन् कृतया हरिर्तुष्यति तद्वृत्तेर्महिमा दर्शितः। सब this service is most glorious. He's saying something which is not clear to me. धर्मज्ञातो न केवलेन स्वधर्मेण भगवतोष अनंगीकृत अंगीकारात्। Okay. He also then refers to 1.5.17 and says it is not simply as a swadharma. This is not a reference to simply engaging in one's swadharma, because that is not accepted as pleasing the Supreme Lord. Sushusha, Paricharya, Karmanaha, Varnashama Dharmasya Siddhaye, Sushusham Vina Karma Matrasya Eva Siddhi Na Bhavati Iti. Without the service of the Shudras, Varnashama Dharma cannot attain its perfection. Saha Shudrasya Vittihi Bhavanti. अपि वस्तुतः सार्ववर्णिक्येव इति भावः तस्यां विषये शूद्रो जातः पद्भ्याम् इति शेषः यद्वृत्त्या हरिस्तुष्यति इति वेदादिभ्योऽपि शुश्रूषायाः उत्कर्षः सूचितः because it is pointed out that Lord Hari is satisfied by this activity of service. This service is exalted even more than the Vedas and so on. Service is the real constitutional occupation of all living entities. The living entities are meant to render service to the Lord, and they can attain religious perfection by the service attitude. One cannot attain religious perfection simply by speculating to attain theoretical knowledge. The Jnani division of spiritualists go on speculating only to distinguish the soul from matter, but they have no information of the activities of the soul after being liberated by knowledge. It is said that persons who only engage in mental speculation to know things do not engage in transcendental loving service of the Lord are simply wasting their time. That is Brahma's prayer, 10th canto, 14th chapter. It is clearly said here that the principle of service was generated from the legs of the Lord for the sake of perfecting the religious process. But this transcendental service is different from the idea of service in the material world. In the material world, no one wants to be a servant. Everyone wants to become the master, because false mastership is a basic disease of the conditioned soul. The conditioned soul in the material world wants to lord it over others. Illusioned by the external energy of the Lord, he is forced to become a servant of the material world. That is the real position of the conditioned soul. The last snare of the illusory external energy is the conception of becoming one with the Lord. And due to this conception, the illusioned soul remains in the bondage of the material energy, falsely thinking himself a liberated soul and, quote unquote, as good as Narayana. It is actually better to be a Shudra than to be a Brahmana and not develop the service attitude, because that attitude alone satisfies the Lord. Every living being, even if he be a Brahmana by qualification, must take to the transcendental service of the Lord. Both the Bhagavad Gita and the Srimad Bhagavatam confirm that this service attitude is a perfection of the living entity. A Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, or Shudra can perfect his occupational duties only by rendering service unto the Lord. A Brahmana is supposed to know this fact due to his perfection in Vedic wisdom. The other sections are supposed to follow the direction of the Brahmana Vaishnava, one who is a Brahmana by qualification and a Vaishnava by action. That will make the entire society perfect in regard to the order of its social construction. A disordered society cannot satisfy either the members of the society or the Lord. Even if one is not a perfect Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, or Shudra, but takes to the service of the Lord, not caring for the perfection of his social position, he becomes a perfect human being simply by developing the attitude of service to the Supreme Lord. But he should take to exclusive service to the Supreme Lord. Then it is okay. 34. Ete varna swadharmena yajanti swagurum harim shraddhaya atma vishuddhyartham yajjata sahavrittibhihi. all these different social divisions, along with the occupational duties and living conditions, are born from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Thus, for unconditioned life and self-realization, one has to worship the Supreme Lord under the direction of the spiritual master. तत्र प्रथमजातैः सर्वैः एतैः तु स्वस्वधर्मः हरियजनरूपतया एव भावितः इति तदानीन्तनानां वैशिष्ट्यम् अभिप्रेत्य आहयेत इति. So these were the ones who were first born. So all of them were meant to carry out their respective dharmas, varna dharmas, as a form of worship of Lord Hari. This is how they are meant to think. So this was the unique feature of the way they carried out these duties at that time. That is spelled out in this verse. Atra yadditi विराजः हरिशक्तितः एव तच्छक्तेः अतः हरिभजने एव तदपेतोक्तेः तात्पर्यम्. These varnas, they came about from universal form, which is the potency of Lord Hari. So in the service to the Supreme Lord, the indication is they are non-different. यत् यस्मात् जाताः गुरुत्वात् जनकत्वात् वृत्तिप्रदत्वात् च हरेराराधनं तेषां परः धर्मः इति अर्थः. The point made here is their worship of Lord Hari, from whom they have taken birth. Who is their guru? Who is their father? Who is the one who has also provided them their source of livelihood, is their highest dharma. Sahavritti bhiriti hari yajane jivikartham chinta na karya iti bhavaha. So they were provided with living conditions, sahavritti bhi, along with their occupation duties. The implication is, in worship of Lord Hari, there should be no anxiety regarding one's livelihood. Since they are born from different parts of the body of the Supreme Lord in its gigantic form, all living entities in all parts of the entire universe are supposed to be eternal servitors of the Supreme Body. All the parts of our own body, such as the mouth, hands, thighs, and legs, are meant to render service to the whole. That is their constitutional position. In subhuman life, the living entities are not conscious of this constitutional position, but in the human form of life, they are supposed to know this through the system of the varnas, the social orders. As above mentioned, the Brahmana is the spiritual master of all the orders of society. In this Brahmanical culture, culminating in the transcendental service of the Lord, is a basic principle for purifying the soul. In conditioned life, the soul is under the impression that he can become the Lord of the universe. And the last point of this misconception is to think oneself the Supreme. The foolish conditioned soul does not take into account that the Supreme cannot be conditioned by Maya or illusion. If the supremacy were to become conditioned by illusion, where would be the supremacy? In that case, Maya or illusion would be the Supreme. Therefore, because the living entities are conditioned, they cannot be Supreme. The actual position of the conditioned soul is explained in this verse. All the conditioned souls are impure due to contact with the material energy in three modes of nature. Therefore, it is necessary that they purify themselves under the guidance of the bona fide spiritual master, who, as we have discussed above, must be not only a Brahmana by qualification, but also a Vaishnava. So here, though the verse says that Lord Hari is actually their gurus, the representative of Lord Hari in this capacity is the Vaishnava Brahmana. The only self-defined process mentioned here is worship the Lord by recognized method under the guidance of the bona fide spiritual master. That is the natural way of purification, and no other method is recommended as bona fide. The other methods of purification may be helpful to come to this point of life, but ultimately one has to come to this last point before he attains actual perfection. The Bhagavad Gita 7.19 confirms this truth as follows. Bahunam janmanam ante jnanavan mam prapadyate vasudeva sarvamiti samhatma suturlaka. After many births and deaths, he who is actually in knowledge surrenders unto me, knowing me to be the cause of all causes and all that is. Such a great soul is very rare. Wait. Time. Stop. There is also a question here. Brahmanas are exempt from paying income tax or land revenue. How Brahmanas will survive now in Kali Yuga and then? Prabhupada said that if we engage in the service of engaging exclusively in pure devotional service and preaching, Krishna will give all the working facilities. So minimal facilities will be provided by Lord Krishna even now in Kali Yuga. Why is it taking so much time? Getting slow. Slow. On 6.35. This comes of paraphrase Jiva Goswami's commentary here. And he is making this point. Shushusha vritti sarvavarnik. The activity of service belongs to all the varnas. Brahmana adi sarvavarnai jadi Shri Hari Shushusha koren. Tabe sei vritti darai Shri Hari santushta hon. When the varnas begin the when all of them engage in this Shushusha, menial service to Lord Shri Hari, it is only then through and because of that service attitude and services, Sri Hari becomes satisfied. Ejannai Shushusha Vrittir Mahima Pradashito Hiyase. It is for this reason that the glory of such service has been presented here. Nitya Naimittik Karma Athava Nashram Dharma Palan Paritya Kuriya Haripada Padma Bhajan Korte Pore Asiddhavasthayo Jadi Bhajan Hoite Kono Prakare Nashta Hoy. If one were to give up Varnashama Dharma or the daily duties, the occasional duties in that system, and he engages, and one were to engage in devotional service to the lotus feet of Lord Hari, and then after in a stage of imperfection itself, for some reason, he becomes deviated from that, or else he dies. Still, अथवा मृत्यु है तथापि कोनो अमंगलेर आशंका नाय. Still, there is no need to fear any inauspiciousness. परंतु भजनहीन व्यक्तिगणेर भक्तिशून्य स्वधर्म पालनेर द्वारा कोनो प्रयोजन सिद्ध হয় না. But personalities who do not engage in devotional service to Lord Hari, who are devoid of devotion to him, their execution of swadharma uh, is not going to bring about any useful result. This is Bhagavatiya 1.5.17. এই শ্লোক হইতে কেবল স্বধর্ম অর্থাৎ স্বস্ববর্ণ ও আশ্রম ধর্ম পালনের দ্বারাই ভগবত দর্শন অস্বীকৃত হয়ে আছে. From this shloka, it is understood that simply carrying out one's varna dharma or ashrama dharma is not been accepted as a cause for the satisfaction of Bhagavan. Therefore, service, the activity of service, is the only cause for Lord Hari's satisfaction. Krishna Chakravarti, Shushrusa Vratit Kono Karmeya Siddhi Hoina. Without engaging in menial service, no activity attains perfection. Shushrusa ba seva shudre vritti hoileo vasutaha uha sarvavarnik. Even though Shushrusa or menial service happens to be the function of a Shudra, in reality, it belongs to all the varnas. अर्थात सर्व वर्ण साधारण धर्म अर्थात वहाँ जीव मात्रे रही स्वाभाविक धर्म. It is a very natural characteristic of every jiva. It is a common duty for all varnas. इस सेवावृत्ति द्वारा एकमात्र हरितोषण हो या थाके, and it is because of this that Lord Hari becomes satisfied. इह द्वारा ब्राह्मण वर्णेर वेदाध्ययनादि वृत्ति अपेक्षाओ शुश्रूषार उत्कर्षत्व सूचित होइलो. Through this, it is pointed out that this service is superior to even the Brahmana Varna's study of the Vedas and so on. Swagurum Janakam Vrittipradam Cha Harim. Here Lord Hari is considered the Guru. The Guru means authority, Guru means teacher, Guru means father, Guru means the one who provides for livelihood. So, because Lord Hari is all of this, therefore he should be served. তাহারা নিজ গুরু সেই শ্রী হরিকে পূজা করিয়া থাকেন. Therefore they serve their own guru. It's also referring to 11.5.2 and 3 important verses. एतक्षत्तर भगवतो दैव कर्मात्म रूपिणः कश्रद्ध्या उपाकर्तुं योगमाया बलोदयम्. O Vidura, who can estimate or measure the transcendental time, work, and potency of the gigantic form manifested by the internal potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead? Okay, question.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Prabhu, so if a person asks that in that case, if someone is like, what is the difference between a Shudra performing services and a devotee performing services if both of them are performing menial services? And if that pleases the Lord.
I'm not able to understand your question.
Prabhu, if a devotee is also rendering menial services, and if a Shudra is also rendering menial services.
No, but the activity of menial service is common to all the Varnas.
Okay, so it is so what specifically Shudras do? Because every Varna
Shudras do
is,
only that. The others do that and many other things.
Okay. So this was misunderstood, and that's why the Varnashram got corrupt. Like this was one of the reason.
See, the higher varnas are meant to include functions of the lower varnas. You cannot, the Brahmana is meant to be so firmly fixed in religious and spiritual activities to such an extent that he should not even require the assistance of the lower varnas. He should be able to survive on his own. Similarly, Kshatriyas, they should be in such a position that they are not dependent on the Vaishyas and Shudras. Only then they will command respect. Why a Brahmana, genuine Brahmana commands respect? Because he is not dependent on anyone lower. The more one is self-dependent, the more he will be respected by the lower varnas. Because the Shudra refuses to become like that as a Brahmana, because he refuses to become like that as a Kshatriya, and because he refuses to become like that as a Vaishya even, therefore he has to be a Shudra and only do service. That's all. The Vaishya, he does service, but he on top of it, he can produce the basic source of livelihood, food for himself and others. Kshatriya should be capable of doing all that in addition to protecting. Vaishyas cannot protect. Vaishyas cannot protect. Vaishyas only produce. And the Brahmana, he should be able to protect them even morally and spiritually. He can give knowledge. Kshatriyas cannot give this knowledge and understanding correctly. Vaishyas certainly cannot. Shudras also cannot. So each higher varna is meant to have certain features which are not found in the lower varnas. Therefore, things were proper. Not very complicated. If you carefully examine, you collate all the instructions, even if you take one scripture as Bhagavatam, you look at all the things that Brahmanas are meant to do, what they are meant to do, what they are allowed to do, and what they are forbidden from doing. Prescriptions, allowances, prohibitions of Brahmanas. And you look at the prescription, prohibitions, allowances of Kshatriyas, prescription, prohibitions, allowances of Vaishyas, prescription, prohibition, allowances of the Shudras. Then you will very clearly see this gradation. Okay, let's move on.
True, but if a Brahmana is independent of lower Varna's help, especially like Shudras, and then, but we hear that the Shudras only they assist the Brahmanas in making some yajna
Yeah, but if
vidhi.
the Shudras don't assist also, the Brahmana should be able to function on his own. No?
Okay, okay, bro.
He should be able to function on his own. Otherwise, why people will respect him?
Yeah, yeah. Much more.
So if you want to hold your position, you have to learn to be self-dependent.
Thank you, bro.
That is a very fundamental concept. A man should be able to, say for instance, Brahmanas, if the wife is not obedient and if she goes away from her home, her husband's home, the man should be able to function on his own. He should be able to just become a sannyasi. That's all. So the more you're dependent, the more you're inferior. The more you're externally dependent, the more you're externally inferior. And the dependents have to be kept under control if they want to make moral and spiritual progress. So these things were all very clear because the entire society is directed towards apavarga. Dharmasya hya apavargyasya is directed towards apavarga. it is not directed towards sense enjoyment, bhoga, rather, it was directed towards tyaga. So the more you see tyaga, the more that is glorified. In today's world, the more bhoga you see, the more that is glorified. So a person who has more bhoga is considered better than a person who has less bhoga. Whereas in Vedic civilization, the one who has more tyaga is glorified and is rated higher than a person who has less tyaga. So because it's oriented entirely differently, the higher and lower also is in terms of tyaga. So therefore, the sannyasi is considered the real hero. The sannyasi, as described in Bhagavatam, is considered the real hero because he does not possess anything. He is fully pure. He has no desire for sense enjoyment. He does not want anything of this world. He's only interested in Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagavan, something like that. So therefore, they're considered heroes in society. So when everything is reoriented in that manner, then it makes sense clearly. Okay, we'll continue. Bhokshatah देवकर्मात्मरूपिणः कालकर्म स्वभाव शक्तिमता भगवतः योगमाया बलेन उज्जृम्भितम् एतद् विराट रूपम् उपाकर्तुं साकल्येन निरूपयितुं श्रद्धध्यात् श्रद्धध्यात् इच्छेत. Who would desire to fully describe this virat rupa, the universal form, which is enriched by the Supreme Lord's potency of Yogamaya. And this Supreme Lord himself is the one for whom time, karmic reactions, and conditioned natures are potencies. Ichhapya shakya nirupanam tu durata ityarthaha. What to speak of describing it, even to desire to describe it would not be factually possible. Yogamaya atra vishwasrishtyadi shakti. Yogamaya here refers to the Supreme Lord's potency to create, maintain, and annihilate the universe. The froggish philosophers may go on with their mental speculations on the subject matter of the Virat, the gigantic form exhibited by the Yogamaya internal potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but factually no one can measure such a vast exhibition. In the Bhagavad Gita 11.16, Arjuna, a recognized devotee of the Lord, says, Aneka Bahu Dharavaktra Nitram Pashyamitvam Sarvato Nandarupam Antam na Madhyam Napunastavadim Pashyami Vishveshvara Vishwarupa. O my Lord, O gigantic Vishwarupa, O Master of the universe, I see innumerable arms, bellies, mouths, and eyes in all directions, and they're all unlimited. I cannot find the end of this manifestation, nor do I see the middle nor the beginning. The Bhagavad Gita was specifically spoken to Arjuna. The Vishwarupa was exhibited before him at his request. He was awarded the specific eyes to see this Vishwarupa. Yet, although he was able to see the Lord's innumerable arms and mouths, he was unable to see him completely. Since Arjuna was unable to estimate the length and breadth of the potency of the Lord, who else would be able to do so? One may only indulge in miscalculation like the frog philosopher. The frog philosopher wanted to estimate the length and breadth of the Pacific Ocean according to his experience of his 3-foot wide well. And thus he began to puff himself up to become as big as the Pacific Ocean, but at last he burst and died by this process. This story is applicable to the mental philosophers who, under the illusion of the Lord's external energy, indulge in estimating the length and breadth of the Supreme Lord. The best path is to become a cool-headed, submissive devotee of the Lord, trying to hear about the Lord from the bona fide spiritual master, and thus serve the Lord in transcendental loving service, as suggested in the previous verse. Self-dependency on what type of thing? Self-dependency in every manner, every possible manner. 6. तथापि कीर्तयाम्यंग यथामति यथा श्रुतम कीर्तिम हरे स्वाम सत्कर्तुम गिरम अन्याभिधा सतीम. In spite of my inability, whatever I have, been able to hear from the spiritual master, and whatever I could assimilate, I am now describing in glorification of the Lord by pure speech, for otherwise my power of speaking would remain unchaste. Anga, Vidura, Thapi Hare Kirtim Kirtayami. Still, I will describe the glory of Lord Hari. Yathashrutam Guru Mukha. Based on whatever I've heard from my spiritual master. Tadapina Sarvatmana. That also not completely. Into Yathamati, Swamatyana, Sarena. I'll speak to whatever extent my intelligence allows. Anyabhida, Hari Vyatrikta, Artha Abhidanam, Taya Asatim, Malinam, Swiyam, Vacham, Satkartum, Pavitrikartum. This is to purify my speech, which would be contaminated by talking about topics other than that of Lord Hari. Kirtim, Adrik Virat Srishyadi Varnana Rupam Giram Vagindriyam. So I'll purify my faculty of speech by describing the creation, maintenance, and annihilation of this universal form. Yathashrutam Guruha Tatapi Yatham Mati Swabudhya Yavad Grihitam Tavadeva Natu Yad Deva Shrutam Ityartha. So I'm not going to speak to you whatever I've heard. I'm going to speak to you whatever I've heard, and within that, and what I have been able to grasp with my intelligence. It's a nice principle that you only repeat what you understand. Anyabhida Hari Vyatirikta Katha Taya Satim Malinam Swiyam Vacham Satkartum Poitrikartum. Purification of the conditioned soul necessitates purification of his consciousness. By the presence of consciousness, the presence of the transcendental soul is verified. And as soon as consciousness leaves the body, the material body is not active. Consciousness is perceived, therefore, by activities. The theory put forward by empiric philosophers that consciousness can remain in an inactive state is the proof of their poor fund of knowledge. One should not become unchaste by stopping the activities of pure consciousness. If the activities of pure consciousness are stopped, certainly the conscious living force will be otherwise engaged, because unless engaged, the consciousness has no standing. Consciousness cannot be silent even for a moment. When the body does not act, the consciousness acts in the form of dreams. Unconsciousness is artificial. By induced extraneous help, it remains for a limited period. But when the intoxication of the drug is finished, or when one is awake, the consciousness again acts earnestly. Maitreya's statement is that in order to avoid unchaste conscious activities, he was trying to describe the unlimited glories of the Lord, despite not having the ability to describe them perfectly. This glorification of the Lord is not a product of research, but is a result of hearing submissively from the authority of the spiritual master. It is also not possible to repeat all that one has heard from a spiritual master, but one can narrate as far as possible by one's honest endeavor. It does not matter whether the Lord's glories are fully explained or not. One must attempt to engage one's bodily, mental, and verbal activities in the transcendental glorification of the Lord. Otherwise, such activities will remain unchaste and impure. The existence of the conditioned soul can be purified only by the method of engaging one's mind and speech in the service of the Lord. The Tridandi Sannyasi of the Vaishnava school accepts 3 rods, representing the vow to engage in the service of the Lord with body, mind, and speech, whereas the Ekadandi Sannyasi takes a vow to become one with the Supreme. This is a reference to the Mayavadi Ekadandi Sannyasis. Since the Lord is the Absolute, there is no distinction between him and his glories. The glories of the Lord, as chanted by the Vaishnava Sannyasi, are as substantial as the Lord himself. And thus, while glorifying the Lord, the devotee becomes one with him in transcendental interest, although he remains eternally a transcendental servitor. This simultaneously one and different position of the devotee makes him eternally purified, and thus his life becomes a complete success. 57. Ekantalabham vachasonupumsam sushlokamauler gunavadamahu Shrutescha vidvadbhirupakritayam kathasudhayam upasamprayogam. The highest perfectional gain of humanity is to engage in discussions of the activities and glories of the pious actor. Such activities are so nicely arranged in writing by the greatly learned sages that the actual purpose of the year is served just by being near them. अज्ञात्वा अपि यथामति कीर्तने श्रवणे वा आवश्यकं कैवल्यं कैवल्यं वै कैवल्यं कैवल्यम् इत्याह. Correct. Despite knowing, despite my lack of knowledge, speaking to whatever extent my intelligence allows, or hearing is absolutely necessary. Why does he say Kaivalyam here? Kaivalya Sugasyapi Atikrama Adhikava Ekantam. What's this? What Kaivalya in Vaishnava? Ekantulaham tu Nishtama. Ekantulaham Varsahara Sam Sukhoguna Gunavadama.
Prabhuji, your voice is breaking, I think.
Is it,
It's
can you hear me now? Shrutesh Shrotrasya Vakrtaya Nirupitaya Upasamprayogam Samidhavarpanam. This is all incorporated. Kaivalya Sugasyapi Atikramaditi iti bhava. Jiva Goswami says that such discussions of the activities and glories of the Lord is superior to the happiness of Kaivalya itself, impersonal liberation. Because the ocean of Harikathamrita is boundless. Samasthena Jnanam na kasyapi. Nobody has complete knowledge of it. Ataha yatkinchit jnane eva tat kirtana shravanabhyam lokah kritarthi bhuya tam prapnavanti. So whatever knowledge they have in this regard, by engaging in kirtana and shravana of that topics, then those topics, people become successful. That is stated here. This is the actual good result of Guna Kirtana of the Lord. In fact, everything else is simply a waste of speech. The impersonalists are very much afraid of hearing the activities of the Lord because they think that the happiness derives from being transcendently situated in Brahman is the ultimate goal of life. They think that anyone's activity, even that of the personality of Godhead, is mundane. But the idea of happiness indicated in this verse is different because it relates to the activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead with transcendental qualities. The word Gunavadam is significant because the qualities of the Lord and his activities and pastimes are the subject matter for the discussions of devotees. A rishi like Maitreya is certainly not interested in discussing anything pertaining to mundane qualities. Yet he says that the highest perfectional stage of transcendental realization is to discuss the Lord's activities. Jiva Goswami therefore concludes that topics regarding the transcendental activities of the Lord are far beyond the transcendental realization of Kaivalya happiness. These transcendental activities of the Lord are so arranged in writing by the great sages that simply by hearing those narrations, one becomes perfectly self-realized and the proper use of the ear and the tongue is also achieved. Srimad Bhagavatam is one of such great literatures, and the highest perfection state of life is attained simply by hearing and reciting its contents. For something, let me try to trace this out. Not looking for. No. This one. Point. Or this also does not. Oh. 58. Atmano vasito vatsam mahima kavinadina samvatsara sasrante dhiya yoga vipakkaya. O my son, the original poet Brahma, after mature meditation for 1000 celestial years, could know only that the glories of the Supreme Soul are inconceivable. न च अतीव ज्ञाने निर्बन्धः कर्तव्यः. One should not become determined too much to attain such knowledge. Brahmanopi durgyayatvad, because the Supreme Lord cannot be understood even by Lord Brahma. Ityaha. This is conveyed in this verse. Atma Harehe Mahima Yoga Vipakvaya Api. Even Yoga Vipakvaya Api Thiya Samvatsara Sahasrante Api Adi Kavina Brahmana Api Kim Avasita Kim Gyataha. What did the original scholar Brahma learn at the end of 1,000 years with an intelligence that is fully matured by yoga? What did he learn about the glories of the Supreme Soul Hari? Iti kakutya etavan iti na gyata eva ityuktam. This is a rhetorical question. So from this it is understood that he did not learn. Atmana iti sarthakam paramatmanah mihma achintya aishwaryadi rupaha. The glory of the Supreme Soul. This is actually, this sentence goes for 1.5 verses. The glory of the Supreme Soul is concerning his opulences and so on, which are all inconceivable. Samvatsara sahasrante yoga vipak vaya dhiya eva vasitaha achintya shaktatvena eva nishchitaha. So after 1,000 years, with an intelligence that attained full perfection through yoga, Brahma came to the conclusion that it is all simply the inconceivable potency of the Supreme Lord. Yadva, alternate explanation by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. Samvatsara sahasranteva mahima iti achintyatva anantatva dugyayattvena nishyate. So the conclusion at the end of 1,000 years regarding his glory was that it cannot be understood because the Lord is inconceivable and the Lord is endless. तदेव भगवन् महिम्नः ज्ञानम् एतावद्दिदम् इत्थं कारेण ज्ञानं तद्ज्ञानम् एवेति भावः. So only that much can be understood regarding the glory of God. तथा च श्रुति. That's the Shruti statement. Ayati shashtam tasya. No, something is wrong. This is not correctly typed. This is not correctly typed. I know this. This is from one of the Upanishads. But this is wrong. It should be correctly typed. See, no. यस्या मतं तस्य मतं. Matam yasya na vedatha. He who thinks he knows does not know. There are some froggish philosophers who want to know the Supreme Soul by means of philosophy and mental speculation. And when the devotees who are to some extent in knowledge of the Supreme Lord admit that the glories of the Lord are inestimable or inconceivable, the froggish philosophers criticize them. These philosophers, like the frog in the well who tried to estimate the measurement of the Pacific Ocean, like to take trouble over fruitless mental speculation instead of taking instructions from devotees like the original poet, namely Brahma. Lord Brahma underwent a severe type of meditation for 1000 celestial years, yet he said that the glories of the Lord are inconceivable. Therefore, what can the froggish philosophers hope to gain from their mental speculations? It is said in the Brahma Samhita that although the mental speculator may fly through the sky of speculation with the velocity of the mind or the wind for thousands of millions of years, he will still find the glories of the Lord inconceivable. The devotees, however, do not waste time in such vain searching after knowledge of the Supreme, but they submissively hear the glories of the Lord from bona fide devotees. Thus, they transcendently enjoy the process of hearing and chanting. The Lord approves of the devotional activities of the devotees or Mahatmas, and he says, Mahatmanastu Mahapartha Daivim Prakritim Ashritah Bhajantyalanya Manasso Gyatva Bhutadim Avyayam Tatatam Kirtayanto Mam Yatantascha Dhritamvrata Namasyantascha Mam Bhaktya Nityayukta Upasate. Bhagavad Gita 9.13 to 14. The pure devotees of the Lord take shelter of the Paraprakriti, the internal potency of the Lord called Lakshmi Devi, Sita Devi, Srimati Radharani or Srimati Rukmini Devi. And thus they become actual Mahatmas or great souls. Mahatmas are not fond of indulging in mental speculations, but they actually take to the devotional service of the Lord without the slightest deviation. Devotional service is manifested by the primary process of hearing and chanting about the activities of the Lord. This transcendental method practiced by the Mahatmas gives them sufficient knowledge of the Lord, because if the Lord can at all be known to some extent, it is only through the means of devotion service and no other way. One may go on speculating and waste the valuable time of his human life, but that will not help anyone to enter into the precincts of the Lord. The Mahatmas, however, are not concerned with knowing the Lord by mental speculation because they enjoy hearing about his glorious activities and his transcendental dealings with his devotees or with the demons. The devotees take pleasure in both and are happy in this life and the life after. Okay, I'll stop with that. Today's fine, so I'll stop with that. Achagalpatavyasya